Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sustainability Explored, a podcast where every week we interview leading professionals, thought leaders, and overall disruptive minds in the field of sustainability to share their views on the present and the future of the world through the prism of sustainable development. Today with us, we have Hege Barnes, Regional Director Americas at Innovation Norway. Passionate, involved, and experienced leader, global growth strategy builder, sustainability focused, creative thinker, connecting people with opportunities. Her favorite quote is, "If you think adventure is dangerous, try routine, it's lethal." And I tend to agree. We will be talking today about the race to electrify, successful electric vehicle use cases, like the first fully electric autonomous container ship, specific programs like private and public sector green shipping program, and the tips to achieve business success in the regions like California, where the governor's executive order requires all new vehicles sold to be electric by 2035. Not to keep you all waiting, let's dive deep into the world of green mobility that is waiting for us to be discovered. I'm ready to welcome our guest, Hege. Will Ferrell may have declared he's coming for Norway in General Motors Super Bowl ad, but Norway says they welcome the challenge. The small country has become a destination, a country that creates an attractive framework for testing new technology that will address and advance the United Nations sustainability goals. While the country has the largest market share of electric vehicles in the world, they want everyone to rally in the race to electrify and are eager to share the frameworks that worked for them. I'm ready to welcome my guest, with whom we will be talking about the innovations in Norway, the innovations that Norway pushes in the country and in the world, and we will focus on mobility in particular. Hege Barnes is my guest today for this wonderful episode. I'm expecting a lot of insights to be shared today. I have previously interviewed Hege's colleague, Gru, in December it was the last episode of 2020, and I'm extremely excited, super happy to welcome Hege on the podcast today. Hege, we will be talking about mobility and innovations that Norwegian government and business entities and society and culture promotes in the world. But before we jump into that topic, I'd like you to introduce yourself a little bit more for the listeners, how you got to work with Innovation Norway, and maybe a little bit in particular, your angle on sustainability.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Hege Barnes, and I am born and raised in Norway, in northern Norway, but I've been over in North America for 23 years now. So I feel rather American in my mindset. But I came to work through an Innovation Norway through a passion of discovering how I enjoyed working actually with my country, promoting my country. As I worked in the business development side, I have a master's in international business, but I also work for the tourism side, like promoting experiences in our country. And I love that aspect of being able to tell a story of that is from your origin, but at the same time is the products, it's the services, and it's a mindset of innovation and creativity that you know and feel like you have a passion for, and helping companies and people succeed in their journey to grow and scale their products abroad. So that's sort of the background of how I came to be, and now being a regional director for Innovation Norway, which is the government entity for trade and industries. It's a huge sort of responsibility, but also phenomenal opportunity to do that, and particularly towards the sustainability angle, which is And that's something I say, I'm proud of Norway, and I'm proud of the industry and our government and our people for how far we've gotten. And that, I think, is the core of the thing. And that makes this such an honorable job, is that in Norway, we have a philosophy that it's driven by the people. It's the people that needs to want it. It's the local communities. It's everybody in, but we don't do this. Well, not everybody, but it is communities, people, smaller businesses, larger corporates, local government, local city and municipalities that needs to want it, and they need to pull together to create stuff, to be a part of this. And that's how we've gotten a lot of the sustainability policies, incentives, initiatives, and local business incentive, business creativity and innovative products. These come through this sort of public-private, but people-driven process, and that inspires me a lot. And that I feel like this, but again, this commitment as well as this honorable job that I just have to do, and I have to make this a success. So that's my passion.
Right. Every piece of news I come across that is coming from Norway, and I follow a lot concerning sustainability on LinkedIn. Every time I have the same thought, oh, that's smart. Oh, how did they come to do that, So what's the key? What's the key to that innovation?
Well, I think it's also driven by history. In the early 1900s here, we were one of the poorest countries in the world. And we live in a very rough part of the world, in essence. We're way up in northern Europe. We have 4 very distinct seasons. We have a long country with tall mountains and large oceans, cold Arctic oceans. So it is gorgeous, but can also be challenging, and we had to survive. So when we found oils in the late 60s, early 70s, we started that whole sort of development of creativity. How do we take advantage of this? How do we use our harsh conditions? How do we use our natural surroundings to make this a profitable industry? So it was driven by a need and given an opportunity to sort of develop that. That plus that we've always been so close to the oceans, we've been a ship building and seafaring country. We traveled the oceans for centuries, and we know how to operate in harsh conditions. So we started testing products and developing engineers and people that wanted to, and they knew how to take advantage of this sort of given natural landscape, and had a curiosity to develop solutions and smart technical solutions and smart sort of innovative ways that you can take advantage of this nature given resource that we had. So the combination of need and opportunity, I think that put us in a unique position, that we've developed very good technical skill sets in several areas: maritime, offshore wind, renewable energies, traditional fossil fuels, to health technologies, and all these different things that cross sectors, but that is funded by a basis of technological innovations, of engineering, sort of the ingenuity of engineering.
Right. Well, speaking of ingenuity and, in a way, revolution in mobility, electric vehicles, can you expand more on the successful cases of electric vehicles promotion, and cases like first truly electric autonomous container ships that was the news that I came across recently?
Yeah. No, it's actually also very exciting. And as I said, we sort of the maritime, the seafaring nation, and also we do a lot of phenomenal product development and innovative shipbuilding, ship technology, logistical sort of solutions on the maritime field. But when, that 10, 20 years ago, we started looking into how we can also get our transportation to be more sustainable. And with this driven, sort of, I said, the incentives that came from the people, as well as the government. And the government started saying, okay, let's get some incentives in place. So with incentives such as lower taxes for electric vehicles, driving in HOV lanes, free parking, free toll booth passing, all these things became more affordable and interesting for Norwegian people to own an electric car, because buying a fossil or a diesel or gas-driven car is expensive in Norway. It's heavily taxed, and petrol is very expensive. So getting these incentives in place, and the government looking into actually finding solutions to get people more interested and triggered in buying electric vehicles, and Tesla coming in, seeing this opportunity. Okay, here's people with an incentive to actually buy an electric car and use it. So it started with the government incentive. It became a trend. People wanted to do it, and they see they could, basically less hassle in their life, as they could use state HOV lanes. They could pass through toll booths. They didn't have to stop and pay. So it became a combination of that. In addition to that, city governments, local industries, clusters, and networks started looking, okay, we need to make it easy to park. We need a charging infrastructure in place. Where do we put up different charging booths? How can we build and facilitate so that it's easier with the whole sort of logistical process of buying, driving, and using an electric vehicle. So you don't have to only charge it at home. Make it easy and affordable to basically use it. And that whole redevelopment has just kicked off totally. Now we have parking garages built underneath the city, where you can charge your car for free. You park there, we get the cars off the streets, we get a city, sort of walking city, you get cars off the street, and you get sort of free charging opportunity as well. So it combines a lot of these different aspects that is attractive to people. It's attractive to the community as a whole, because you get cars off the streets, you make it easy, you make it affordable, and the logistics there. And you have like an innovative spirits to it as well, and where the ecosystem can come up with other solutions, other technologies, other ways of making the whole industry thriving and looking forward.
Sounds like a people-centered government,
Yes, and I think it's also that's exactly it is, and it's a people-centered industry, an initiative, and it's something that people get proud of as well, and now it's 54% of all new vehicle bought in Norway is electric. And we are only 5 million people, so in some it's not that, but it becomes sort of that positive effect, that positive trend, and the spread. It spreads to the population, so more people want an electric car. It's easier to use or drive than a diesel or gas-driven car.
Has the country already thought about the recycling of those batteries used in the electric vehicle?
Yes. So we haven't found the ideal solution yet. This is the biggest conundrum at the moment. But actually battery sort of recycling production, the whole life cycle of the battery is one of the biggest incentives or initiatives from the Norwegian government at the moment. So we're trying to build up a whole new sort of sector, a whole new industry to manage and handle that. That's one of our biggest priority areas, because we see that electrification of cars or transportation in general, on water, underwater, on land, in the air. We have our first electric plane is supposed to come in less than 10 years, I think. So all this is a big industry, it's both a big industrial opportunity, as well as we think that we have the skill set in Norway, and it is something that is a global societal problem that we want to be a part of solving. So it's a huge initiative and a lot of innovative processes and funding being put to this, so that we can build out the industry, we can build out the competencies, we can find the smart solutions, and we can work together with others to both bring in foreign investment and foreign competencies into Norway, so that we can see how we can build up a global sort of society and a community that can help increase the value creation in Norway, of course, but also help the global society find solutions to solve this.
I am thinking that, I will not be surprised if Norway even makes it circular, completely waste-free, the process of creating batteries, recycling batteries, upcycling batteries. I'll be like, well, that's kind of expected. Nothing new on this front.
No, and that's why we're trying to, and as I was saying, it's still a conundrum to figure that out, but absolutely, the whole circular economy And I think that's sort of the biggest driver in all sectors these days, you know. Some have really figured it out and starting to use food waste or fabrics, you know, in a full circular way. But for other areas, we still have a little ways to go. But this, since with it all, like carbon capture, we have a huge carbon capture project that's going, funded by the government as well, to figure out how do we store it, how do we reuse it, how can we actually take out and extract all this and put it back into good use in other areas. So all this, as of now, it's more on the storage side, but it will be how do we actually use it, reuse it, and reuse it.
Yeah, I saw that news about carbon capturing somewhere in Norway. The question I cannot help but ask is, how do we clone Norway in other countries of the world?
That's a very good question, and we are a very open society. You know, we have a open innovation system as much as we can, and we're small, but we're trying to share and we're trying to be out there. And we are part of a lot of these UN organizations. We are not an EU country, but we are in the Economic Development Corporation. And I think we also need, you know, Norway has a need for more talent, more competency, more insight from abroad as well to come in to develop this. We don't know it all alone, but we have the processes. And I think what the world can learn is exactly what I've mentioned about this sort of people-driven or the open society-driven. There's a lot of trust in a smaller community and a well-functioning sort of society, as in Norway. So the public-private partnerships work really well together. We have funding mechanisms that are actually driven by sort of giving funds from the government to the industry themselves, that are organized in clusters and networks and ecosystems that where the industry themselves are the driving factor. They learn and develop this. We are just the facilitators. We, as in the government, are the facilitators that can fund and support the right initiatives. But the industry themselves are the ones that know where the pressure is, where they need the fund, when, you know, where the challenges are, etc. Yeah. And then with that, we're also trying to get this message and spread it abroad as much as we can, also for our own interest, but also to get that insight out and attract foreign investments back home. With foreign investment, the smart money comes also the smart people, the smart talents, and the smart sort of communities that can be where you can share cross global sort of ecosystems. And I think that's what we're working a lot on that, but it's also the biggest challenge, again, being a small country, you know, our influence and knowledge is limited, but we try.
Small but mighty.
Yes, exactly. And we actually do have a royal visit that's coming up, first digital royal visit to California. And this is part of the topic. And, you know, we were looking into what is it that we can share and what is the need in California specifically, and they are electrifying their industries over there. You know, they have a goal of becoming carbon neutral and electrify all transportation within 2040, I think, or 2045. And that plus that they're looking at developing offshore wind to get more renewable energy sources. And that's something we have a great deal of experience in. You know, we know these topics. We have a value chain, we have supply chain operators that can deliver into this. We have larger operators, developers that can help do this. So we're seeing this needs to be a topic, but we need to have the dialogue. What do they need and how can we match the competencies? What do they have that we need? You know, so it needs to be this dialogue. Sort of dialogue forum, if you want to, where you actually talk about this and match the interest and the needs in different societies. That's how we can all learn. That's how we can benefit. And that's how our companies get an opportunity, a door into the market in California, where they can sort of supply their competencies, their skills, their smart solutions. And Californians can do the same thing to Norway.
Yeah.
So we're trying in that way as well to see if we can open some doors and start some dialogues.
That's cool. You know, the topic of electric vehicles goes hand in hand with electricity itself. In Ukraine, for example, we have a funny case. There are electric vehicles, but you charge them with the electricity coming from coal sources. Yeah. So it has to be, you know, it goes really in one ecosystem that you have to have a lot more alternative energy sources to make this extra industry as mobility, electric vehicles, and electricity, they both have to be sustainable and clean and as much alternative and green as possible. How does Norway approach merging these two industries?
So, you know, in Norway, we electricity, we have an abundance of electricity. In Norway, we have 1.5 million waterfalls. So we have hydropower, very, very, we have a lot of water. And we have a good way of extracting sort of water and using hydropower to produce electricity. Which is a reasonable way of doing it. So all our electrification, most of our sort of, you mentioned the Yara Birkeland, the big container ships, we do see a lot of these things that can be run on hydropower, right? And we're looking into how can you extract that into hydrogen and ammonia, like there's some development on ammonia, using ammonia as a renewable energy source. So we're taking the experience that we've seen with the hydropower, how we've taken that, extracted that, how we can use that, how you can get the electricity, how you can do electricity, how you can further that, sort of the processes of extracting that into other sources. So for us, it's been using what we know, you know, what we have an abundance of, what we have internally. We're actually exporting electricity, but now we're seeing how can we sort of use that for our own development, you know, for the industry. And I think that's different, you know, definitely based on where you are in the world and what you have. And I think a lot of this is also learning of taking advantage of the natural resources that you have yourself, or can get easy access to, or have a processing system or a infrastructure that can put that into the most efficient use. You know.
Wise, yeah, wisdom in itself. Could you tell me more about the green shipping program and specific programs like this, private or public?
Yeah, so the green shipping is something, anything with green sort of technologies, and we often also call it sort of the green blue technologies because it's based on the blue maritime fields and green sort of smarter solutions for that. But it's all, again, driven by the people, but it's initiated by the government. So they have said that we need all sort of transportation on water to be a zero carbon emission or zero sources. But basically it is saying that anything that travels on water, on land as well. The city of Oslo has a zero carbon policy by 2040, I think, as well. And the same is on water. I actually think that's 2030, because we're moving so rapidly in the development of renewable or electric and hybrid solutions for the transportation of water. So this is anything that is being built or used or run on our oceanways should have less carbon emissions or zero carbon emission over time. We have actually I'm looking at it, in 4 years, in 2025, any vessel or ferry that runs on our fjords in the western parts of Norway that are UNESCO World Heritage protected, they need to have zero carbon emission, you know. So they need to run on electric or hydrogen or something else to be able to operate in the fjords. And we're looking at the, you know, container ships, because they're trying to move a lot of the transportation of cargo from the roads and over to the waterways, as they see a shifting. For example, this Yara Birkeland, which is the world's first, that's also trying to be an autonomous ship. You know, there's zero emission. In a couple of years, they expect it to be fully autonomous, operating shorter distance along our coast, fully autonomous. But they're seeing that shifting the vessels from, shifting the transportation of cargo from the roads to the ocean, that is like reducing diesel-powered truck transport by around 40,000 journeys per year. So that's quite big, and that's the whole initiative. It's to get that in effect. And we have both the shipbuilding yards in Norway, we have the supply chain that delivers the different parts and the logistic part, including our ports handling. So getting the whole maritime industry to shift in this direction, to work with, having all the electric or renewable sort of energy sources available to charge in ports on the water, as well as the whole sort of port infrastructure logistically, and then and also then of course it's also making this an export good for us as well, so that we can both sort of sell our smart solutions and the ship and transport our goods in a sustainable way. But it's publicly initiated, it's government supported, and it is industry financially viable. So we're seeing that it's going to be a big new industry for us. Or it is an industry. Maritime is an industry, but the green maritime industry is going to be we foresee that as one of the bigger growth areas that we have in Norway.
Yeah, that sounds super futuristic, and I wanted to include a little note for anyone who listens to us. If you are looking where to be in sustainability in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, green maritime industry might be your place to shine.
Definitely. And I think green maritime also goes for a lot of industries. It's also like we're looking at the offshore wind that we talked about earlier here. That is a huge area. They need ships, going in and out, ferrying in and out, both from getting the electricity in back to shore. They need to transport people and cargo and all. So there's a lot of things where the maritime industries crosses over, in addition to shipment of goods and people, from A to Z. And the people transport is also very interesting because it gives for more enjoyable experiences when you are on board a quiet electric or hydrogen-driven ship versus a diesel engine that is pretty loud when you're on the ship trying to enjoy the beautiful scenery around you.
100%. Hege, what would be your tips to achieve success in regions that are, required by the legislation to have new vehicles sold to be electric in California, for example, by 2035? That gives us another 14 years. And I assume other countries of the world, other regions of the world will be following the lead sooner or later. So what would be your tips and tricks for the business success of these initiatives?
Well, I do think if you look at California, in particular, if you look at LA, for example, and an issue that we also saw here in New York City, we actually have had a delegation coming from New York City to Norway to look at charging, the logistics of charging. In New York City, it's all privately owned buildings and it's traffic congestion, the cars are around. So you can't just stop and charge, everywhere. So all these logistics of finding out if you want people to run electric cars, you need to make it easy. You need to make it easy to just jump in your car and drive, or need to go where you need to go, and not having to plan. Oh my God, okay, so I got 20 minutes of of power left. I need to charge there, so that the logistics of planning becomes too complicated. That said, and then I also believe that in incentives, you need to tell the story. You need to tell the right story. Why are we driving electric cars? And then you need the right incentives to also help making it affordable. In the US, it's also rather expensive, or more expensive often. It's getting better now. GE is starting to launch a lot of their cars. So the price level is going down. But it is they make it easy for people to both buy a car, make it affordable, make it also easy to charge and use it, and have the right incentives in place to get them started. And that's what getting started in Norway. A lot of these incentives will eventually evade and sort of evaporate and go away, but make that a trend, make it easy to use, and make it understandable for people. And it is a logistical sort of challenge that bigger cities in particular need to figure out, how do we charge it? Where do we park it efficiently, and all that? So I think this, again, is some learning of the needs from the public versus the opportunities from the government to initiate it. And then, having sort of a pressure and timeline, it's always good, because you need to make it happen. And then I would also say, get the industry involved, because it's the industry that innovates. It's the smart tech engineers and people that have the solutions that are in the driving seat. They are the ones that needs to make it happen and can make it happen.
Yeah, there is hope for the future, and I like that it evolves while we speak. It's happening so fast that I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe I am witnessing in my lifetime the changes that I am witnessing.
Yeah. But I also want to say one thing, and that's sort of to help in the environment. It's also, we're not just looking at personal cars. We're looking at buses. Norway and Oslo just bought 100 new electric buses, and I think they have 200-300 buses, and Oslo is a small city of 600,000 people, but all through the countries we are buying more and more electric buses. And the buses today drive back to a depot, and then you just have charging stations there. So it's buses, it's bigger sort of the subways and all the other sort of mass transportation that also can be more efficiently and renewably run. Yeah,
a good point. I literally yesterday I saw an infographic from Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which stated that 92% of time the cars in Europe are parked.
Yeah, because most people live in bigger cities, and you don't really use it that much. But can you imagine how many buses they're running around? Diesel buses and all, spreading a lot of
but the pandemic, but
yeah.
COVID-19.
That has actually been a good thing. That's the only, or one of the few good things that come out of the pandemic. I think the environment has enjoyed it.
Yeah, a little bit, I hope so. Or rather, we have flipped from one emissions to another sort of emissions. If we're not using the transport, we're using deliveries and over-consuming the plastic and overproducing the plastic and masks and gloves and the list can go on and on.
You're absolutely right. That's other concern. That's a growing concern actually through this, yes.
But I definitely love that it advanced and accelerated the digitalization of work. For example, we are having this conversation on the podcast being in overseas, how do you call it, from different sides of the ocean.
Yeah.
And if we would still continue no, we have to meet, let's fly to somewhere to sit together for a couple of hours. Yeah, I'm glad how it's developing. A lot of possibilities to express yourself are out there because it has been tremendously accelerated by the pandemic. But no,
but I do believe I 100% agree with you, but I do miss and I do believe that people needs to meet, and that's how we actually share and we increase our understanding of cultural differences. We understand we have to meet in person. You have to experience something firsthand to really understand things. And we're seeing a lot of things happening in this world that's not so positive because we're just surrounded by like-minded people. And if you really want to look at innovation and including in sustainable developments, you need the different mindset to come together. You need different cultural understanding, and these social, political, everything needs to sort of come into a big mishmash. And then that happens when people meet, when different minds come together from different viewpoints. So that is something to look forward to. And with a more sustainable way of traveling, transportation on water, underwater, on land, and in the air, the airline industry is making progress. It's smaller planes, smaller distances, but electric airplanes in 20 years might be the norm, or with biofuels or something else. So I am a firm believing in science and innovation and research. So
yeah, and
hopefully the smart minds of the students of today, of the innovative clusters and clusters is also the networks of people coming together again. Those things gives me hope.
Wow, yes, I cannot add anything to these beautiful words apart from one thing. My Estonian friend would say, people need to smell people.
Yes, I so agree. Yeah. And I miss that. I miss meeting people. I have to admit that.
Me too. Well, to wrap up this interview, it has been an amazing conversation. I'm glad we managed to sit together and talk. I usually ask my guests to provide one piece of advice for the listeners of this podcast. What would be yours?
My advice, I think it would be never stop being curious, and also definitely grateful because we're in a tough situation. But believe in science, believe in innovation, believe in yourself, and always be curious. Because if we stop being curious, nothing will be created, nothing will be invented, and we've gotten so far in this world based on that. So keep on being curious, keep on moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Thank you. This is exciting. I'm happy to be here.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us here today and for listening to this episode. This was episode number 89, season 8 of Sustainability Explored. If you like this podcast, please consider subscribing, rating, and commenting on the platform you're listening on. We are now available on 77 plus platforms, so there is a lot of space for you to explore. We would very much appreciate your feedback, and we know that it will most certainly make us very, very happy. If you have something to share with me or our guest, Hege, please don't hesitate to let us know via LinkedIn. I will leave the links to our LinkedIn profiles in the show notes. Yes, again, if you like this podcast, please leave a review, rate, comment on the platform you're listening on. Your review, your comments, your stars will help other people discover this podcast and educate themselves on the matters of sustainability. Thank you once again for listening, and until next time, next Thursday, take care, stay sustainable. Bye-bye.